Episode 6 of our Sunday lockdown. We've got Arne on this chat today. We're going to be talking about his 987 Gen 1 Sport. But before we get into that, I thought I'd basically say thanks to all of you that have been sending me your subscriber videos. That's been great. I've had more videos probably in the last couple of months than I've done in about a year. So keep sending that up. That's great. Thanks for the guys that are just saying the stream's gone live. This is actually, I thought when we did our very first one, we had Anthony in Australia. I thought that was the furthest reach the channel's ever gone. We're going even further today. We're going 11,700 miles. I won't tell you the destination. I'll leave that to Arne. Let me just bring him on screen. Arne, there you go. You're on screen, man. Welcome to our Sunday lockdown special. Apologies in the video that I did for you when I pronounced your name Arnie, by the way. It's Arne, and we can come on to that. So apologies for that.
No problem. No problem, Max.
There you go. So maybe you can tell us, so whereabouts are you based? Like 11,700 miles away from the UK?
I'm on the other side of the planet from the north of Spain. So I'm in the South Island of New Zealand. So if you drill a hole from the north of Spain, you come out right here. And so I'm very close to the Southern Alps, in the foothills of the Alps, and about 2 hours away from Christchurch, which is usually the one place people know about the South Island of New Zealand, where we had the big earthquake about 10 years ago. And yeah, a little tourist town is where I live, about 2 hours inland.
You had a lot of people kind of envious with some of the backdrops, certainly me, and there were a lot of people talking about this. Let me just quickly pull up a picture of your car against some scenic backdrops. So this is obviously your 981 Gen 1 Sport. You've got this picture of your car in front of a beautiful lake. I'm not sure if you kind of coloured the water, but it just looks absolutely amazing there.
Yeah. No, that's it's a lake on the South Island as well, and it's Lake Tekapo actually. And that water has a lot of glacial minerals in it. So in the summer, it turns into that hue of unbelievable blue, basically. Yeah, so no Photoshop there.
There you go. So whereabouts were you originally, sort of like, I guess, where were you born, and then how did you end up in New Zealand by any chance?
I'm Dutch, and I'm from the north of the Netherlands, a city called Groningen, which is the furthest, closest to the North Sea out of all the major cities. And I moved here to New Zealand about 10 years ago. So I did quite a bit of travel, including New Zealand about 15 years ago, and just really liked it, and came back over here about 10 years ago, basically just with a backpack and my partner, and we both thought like, hey, if it's going to be a year on a work visa, that's cool. If it's going to be 2 years, if we could extend it, that would be fun. And if we can actually manage to live in New Zealand, if it all works out, why not live in New Zealand for a while?
Yeah, good for you. I think that's something that I probably missed out in my younger life, that kind of spirit of adventure and travel. I was probably too busy just sort of trying to study my way out of my parents' grocery shop. But, travel thing is lovely. I think we've had a few people on here already say New Zealand is a place they just want to visit at some stage in their life.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the airfares might be a little bit higher in the next couple of years, but it's definitely worth your trip. Yeah. And after I came here the first time, I actually came back a couple of times showing people around, as a job, tour guiding. And every time I left here, I felt like, why am I leaving? It's such a nice place. And one day just kind of made the decision to come over, and now I go to Europe for my holidays. So I just switch stuff around. Yeah.
There you go. And in case you're wondering why it's a little bit dark over there, the sun hasn't quite come up there, because even though not yet, so it's 7 a.m. That's quite a late sunrise this time of year, though.
Yeah. It's going to be even later though. But we just quit daylight savings hours, so it's just how it is, mate. I can't change it.
There you go. Okay. So while we're here, let me quickly put up a picture of your car, because it did get a lot of people talking, because the interior is quite special on this car. So obviously hopefully you've seen the video on the channel. I'll just quickly get up a picture of the interior. And but maybe before we talk about your Cayman, should we maybe sort of talk about how we got to your Cayman? Because we do like the backstories here, and your first car is kind of quite exciting. So I won't put the picture up. If you can tell us about the first car, and then I'll put the picture up as you talk about it.
All right, cool. And the picture you've got actually is not actually my first car. I have a few printed pictures of my car, but that's actually an image from the internet I found, and it's exactly like my first car. The only difference is I had a black vinyl roof, which makes it even worse.
Yeah,
But it's the same color, it's the same model. So it's a 1977 Camaro, Chevy Camaro. Yeah, it had a big 5.7 V8, and I just really, I was about 22 years old, and I really liked muscle cars, and I couldn't afford like a nice C2 Corvette or a C3 Corvette, and I also could not afford a first generation Camaro. And these second generation Camaros, actually that's a third generation Camaro in a way, because you have the shark nose in between. And yeah, they were, let's call it affordable, especially if you got a slightly less nice example like I had. And yeah, the budget stretched a certain length, and that was the car for me back then. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that these cars always add to the history. So when you do get into a Cayman, like I can only imagine what the handling of that car was like round the corners. I mean,
yeah.
Do you remember what it was like?
It was horrible. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I must say, you know, I had a motorbike from when I was about 19 years old, and that was like my main transportation if I would go out of town. And yeah, coming from a motorbike and then into a car like that, you know, it's not really about the handling. It was just a bit of fun, really. Yeah. And I had the opportunity to buy it, and I had it. I think I only had it for about 7 months or something like that, and then I was already like, all right, this, you know, enough of this. And I didn't even have a garage to put it in. I just parked in the street and all that kind of stuff. So it had to be a little bit rough too. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how did it look? How did it kind of fit in on the streets? Because I know a lot of people cycle, as in bicycle. There's a lot of bicycle usage over there. So I mean, a huge American muscle car. I mean,
yeah, it draws a bit of attention and it makes a lot of noise, but yeah, like I said, it was just a bit of fun, and you could road trip in it, but it wasn't a very fast car, and obviously, yeah, you don't take corners very fast either. But just for cruising, those muscle cars are great, you know. And I still like them, you know. I still, when I go to like a car meet or something, we have one here in the village every year that brings about, I think, about 500 cars. A lot of them are muscle cars, and because there's quite a big muscle car scene here in New Zealand as well. And I still really enjoy seeing them, you know, all the 1970s colors and all that kind of stuff. And just, they are a little bit ridiculous, but that makes them so cool at the same time.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's quite a few guys in the States kind of saying that is a great car. And we've actually got, Oyvind, there we go. Actually, we've actually got him for Norway. We were just talking about you earlier on, Oyvind. There you go. He's the guy with the Cayman R. I think that's what makes these kind of cars special, is that it's not all about like the huge amount of brake horsepower. It's a car with character, and that's kind of what I like about the Cayman. Is, you know, fine, people talk about 911 turbos and so on, but it's not about that. And on that note, I'm going to quickly show a picture of your interior, because I think we were talking about this. It's quite a kind of a European-esque, kind of like the classic silver. It's kind of what I think they show in the Porsche brochures, this kind of colour scheme.
Exactly, yeah. After I bought the car, actually, I started looking more into like Porsche promotion material from when it came out in 2005, 2006. And they usually featured like a red, I think a Guards red base Cayman. And then for the Cayman S, they always had this Arctic silver car with the terracotta interior. So, yeah, somebody at Porsche also liked that color combination, obviously, and decided to market the car with that combination. And I really like it too. And funny enough, the guy I bought the car off, he said a lot of people actually were put off by the interior.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he had a bit of trouble selling the car at first, both because it was a manual and because of that color combination. And I think if it was black, the interior, it would have sold quicker and I would have missed out. So, yeah.
Everything works out for a reason, yeah.
Yeah. And like I told you, you know, I'm not going to sell it. It's my car, you know, and yeah. I'll have it until we're not allowed to burn fossil fuels anymore.
Well, I don't want to really go on to that. There's a really cool video I was watching by Harry's Garage, which is a guy in the UK, and he was just talking about the move to electric cars and how people think that's basically zero carbon emission. And he was just actually debunking that entire thing, because obviously the electricity's got to come from somewhere. And obviously, in the UK, we don't get that much from wind farms. So he actually pretty much figured out that on a day when it's not so windy, you can actually be more CO2 to generate the electricity to charge the batteries than actually a fuel-efficient petrol car. So it's a bit crazy, that is.
It is a bit crazy. And I also think if you want to save the environment, buy a car that's already existing and keep driving it, And of course, there's a lot of cars from like the early 2000s with really small displacement and great mileage. So yeah, if you want to save the planet, that's the way to go. Don't buy a new electric vehicle.
Yeah. Here we go. We've got someone from Holland who's checking in, Roivy. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Very good, very good.
There you go. So I guess we've kind of mentioned on your Cayman, we're kind of like flicking backwards and forwards. There isn't a lot of planning here, but if you could maybe wind us back to what you were driving before your Cayman, and then actually what triggered you to kind of go, I want to get into a Cayman, if it's your first Porsche and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So living in New Zealand, living in the hills, I always think the first thing you need here is a four-wheel drive. And from travels before, both in Australia and in New Zealand, I always saw these really cool four-wheel drive vans, and there's only two brands that make them. Toyota is one, and then Mitsubishi is the other one. And the Mitsubishi ones are a little bit nicer, and they're also a little bit more rugged. They're actually based on the Mitsubishi Pajero four-wheel drive. So the chassis, the suspension, the engine, it's all the same, and they just put like a van body on top. Okay. So my other car, which I still have, and I bought that 10 years ago on coming to New Zealand, is a Mitsubishi Delica.
And you've got a picture of it here. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And it's actually a proper four-wheel drive, so it's a great little vehicle. It does everything, It hauls your, your whatever you want to get from town. I've had fridges in the back. I had furniture in the back. You can use it as a little camper van. You put a mattress down. And with all the seats in there, it carries 7 people.
Wow. It looks like a really compact car. Is it quite narrow?
No, it's normal size. Yeah. Yeah, and mine is actually slightly higher than the standard one. And what is really funny about those Mitsubishi Delicas is actually Matt Farah from the Smoking Tire. He bought one like a month ago, and he featured it on his channel. And it's exactly like mine. And I just had such a laugh when I saw it. I'm like, now I'm officially a car guy. Even the worst handling, slowest vehicle that I own, is now cult.
Yeah, well, we've got a few guys on the channel that are recognizing that car already, so I'm not sure if they've got one already, but yeah, it's the Mitsubishi Delica. I've never heard of it. Delica to me is the name of a German biscuit made by Balsen, I'm sure.
All right, yeah. The original one was an L300, and then this is, I think, the L400, so you might know them like that. There's also a two-wheel drive version. And now you have what they call the space gear, which actually has the engine in the front. So it's not, it's still like a people mover, but it's not a proper four-wheel drive anymore, and it's not like a van setup,
Okay, I remember we were talking earlier on, because this whole connection's over broadband, because it's like over the signal. There's no cable running into your house. So did you purchase this 4x4 for like kind of essential reasons? Because you're quite kind of remote, you're up a hilly kind of incline, or?
No, it's more like if you want to get around. There's a lot of gravel roads out here. There's a lot of high country access. If you want to drive up to the ski fields, it's all gravel roads and quite steep. If you want to go hunting or camping, it's just really nice to have a four-wheel drive vehicle here. It gives you access to half of the country, which you wouldn't get, if you don't have a four-wheel drive. Wow. And and then using it for camping as well. And I've got a little lodge here, so I have to sometimes go into Christchurch and pick up a lot of stuff. It's just nice to have something that can haul stuff as well. Okay. And having a four-wheel drive diesel, it also has a lot of grunt. So if you have to, pull a trailer or something like that.
I was going to say, is there some kind of like a winch on the front of the car? Is it? Or not?
No, that's
I can see some.
Okay. Yeah, that's just like a tow strap, and that photo was actually taken when I was out with a friend of mine, Victor, and he's an avid four-wheel driver. Okay. And we really went into some backcountry, and we were really on that river for a long time, and we did some mud holes and all that kind of stuff. And that strap was just there as a precaution. If I would get stuck, he would be in front of me with with a massive four-wheel drive, with high suspension and huge tires, mud tires, and he would always be able to pull me out.
So you're talking about getting stuck in the Delica, that car getting stuck. Oh my!
If it did get stuck, it did get stuck at some point. We went through a bog and there was like a full tree, like in the mud.
Wow.
So that was the moment where I needed his assistance. But hey, that car can get you just about anywhere. Anywhere like Mitsubishi Pajero will get you. That little van will go too, and that makes it so cool.
That's amazing. You're kind of making me think that the roads over there don't really call for like a Cayman GT4 or something with low ground clearance. It doesn't.
No, I have seen GT4s out here, and like the normal road network is pretty good. It's reasonably rough. The population on the South Island is 1 million people, so there's not a lot of money to throw around tax-wise, to maintain the roads. But the roads are stunning. The scenery is out of this world, really, and in general, the road conditions are pretty good. But I wouldn't go myself. I wouldn't go for a GT4 out here. Also because you only get to tap into about a third of its potential. Even my Cayman S, our speed limit is 100 k's an hour here. So there is stretches where you can go a little bit faster. But what makes it so enjoyable is that most of the roads out here, they're very curvy.
Okay.
So you're either on the coastline, following the coast, or you're crossing the hills or the mountains, and it's just one corner after another. And
Wow.
living here for about 7 years, driving that van, which I still have. I always thought, one day if the budget is there, I should get myself a little mid-engine sports car and really have fun on these curvy roads. And I always liked the Cayman. I was never really like a crazy Porsche enthusiast or something. I was just like, yeah, it's a cool brand, but I wasn't like, hunkering for one from being a teenager or something like that. But I did really take notice when they brought the Cayman out. I thought, a slightly smaller and a mid-engine version of the 911. How cool is that? How interesting. But once again, a new car well beyond the budget, 14 years ago. And when I started looking for a mid-engine sports car, so this is about 4 years ago or 5 years ago probably, I also had a look at the Caymans. And to my surprise, some of those first generation ones, they were actually getting closer to my budget than I thought they would be. So instead of looking for a Miata or the other contender might have been like an R8, like a first gen R8, but then reading up about the Caymans, and because it's not like you walk down the street here and there's one parked, they're quite rare out here. I really got into it and just started using all the auto sites here to find one, which took another 6 months because I wanted a manual.
Okay.
And funny enough, even though we have all these beautiful roads, most of the Caymans and most of the Porsches out here, I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK, but most of them are automatics.
Oh, really?
Probably about 80%. And I was really surprised by that because I thought, well, if you're in New Zealand and the roads are fairly empty and you buy yourself a two-seater sports car, why go for the automatic? And then I realized later on that most of those cars are actually in Wellington and in Auckland, where the high-end jobs are, and a big part of the population lives as well. And those are quite hilly cities with a lot of stop-starts. So if you live in Auckland particularly and you drive a sports car, having a manual is not ideal.
Yeah.
So it took a while to find a really nice a manual Cayman. Yeah.
There you go. That's quite an interesting story because I'm kind of getting the impression that, as you said, when you were a young boy, you didn't kind of like dream after a Porsche or something, but it was actually the roads in your surrounding area. I mean, coastal roads, they're my favourite, okay? If you've got the sun down, it seems like it's the roads, you're going around in your Delica, and maybe you're thinking, hang on a minute, these roads would be a lot more enjoyable in a sports car.
That's the thing. You get passed by just about anything in that little van,
Yeah.
And and then of course, going back to the Camaro as well, I like something which is slightly different. and European sports cars, they are, yeah, fairly rare out here. And the nice thing again about the Cayman is if you do see a Porsche out here and it's not a Macan or a Cayenne, it's a 911. There's you see them. I wouldn't say regularly, but if you see one, it probably is a 911.
Yeah.
And then there's a long drop, and it's very rare to see a Cayman. And yeah, I like this, and I like this the compact. This nice round little soft little sports car. I really like. Yeah, I think.
Car.
Yeah, it's very understated at the same time. I think the Cayman. It doesn't have that look at me kind of aspect to it.
Yeah, I mean the country of it seems quite similar. So there's a guy here on this channel called Phil, and he lives in Switzerland, and he said nearly all the people that have a Porsche out there, which is the sports car, is a 911. So he walked into a dealership and he could purchase quite a hard to get car for us in the UK. He managed to get a 718 GT4 because most people go after the 911. So
yeah,
I guess it is understated, but we all love Caymans here, so I think we're in a little bubble of our own. So
exactly. I mean, if I see somebody in a cool 911, it's still a big thumbs up. I like those cars as well, but for me, there's if you look at the pricing, there's no upside for me buying into a 911 because you don't get to use the extra 100 horsepower. You really don't out here. And I have no need for two, tiny back seats. Even if you have kids, I think they're hardly usable at all. And yeah, why not go for the more special version with the mid-engine that handles better and gives you two storage compartments? For a weekend getaway car, it's also just perfect.
That's great. So would you say that the roads where you are quite twisty? So, I mean, if you get out of Christchurch where there may be like freeways or something, where you are, it's basically windy roads. You're not kind of going straight for that much.
No, not much. No. It's all quite twisty out here. It's probably a little bit like Switzerland. You're always close to a mountain. Which gives you the views, and you're always going up and down a little bit as well.
Cool, working the brakes and everything. That's cool. So, by the way, keep your questions coming. What I'm trying to do, I'm kind of having like a free-flowing conversation. I'll kind of dip into the comments. I know there's some questions for Arne over there, but we'll kind of come back to those in a moment. So, there was a comment that I put on your car, and someone said that I had to get out of it more because I didn't have enough of a life. But your car is the only one I've seen with memory seats on the driver's side on a 987. And it got me thinking about the spec on that car because it is quite a high spec car. So do you know, have you got any sort of history on how the car was spec'd? Do you know if it was like a dealer spec car? Was it just someone that purchased the car new in New Zealand, or did it come from another country? Do you know that?
Well, because New Zealand is so small, population-wise as well, it wasn't that hard to actually get the history of the car. So for me to get the car actually very, very quickly, so I was looking on websites and I saw this one advertised for quite a bit more than I was willing to pay, and I kind of had it on my short list. We have like an auto trader here as well, and then one day I was having breakfast, and it was about 3 months after it got listed. I looked at my short list and I'm like, oh, he took some money off it. He can't sell the car, and he took quite a bit of money off it. So I decided to give him a call, and at that time there was two other Caymans, both manual, for sale, and all three of them were in Auckland. So this is on the North Island, where most of the expensive cars do tend to live. And I figured, all right, if I really want to do this, I better get myself on an airplane and check out those cars. So I flew out, and in 2 days I had to look at three Caymans. And the car I own now was by far my favorite when I flew over, and I also had the most expectations with this one. It was also slightly more expensive than the other two. I drove two of them. I just had to look at the other one. And when I actually parked up in my little rental car to the previous owner's house, he was just giving it the final clean, on the driveway. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to buy that car. That was like straight away. Because with the interior as well, if you see it on photos, it's just about how the lighting is. Sometimes it looks very like classic leather brown, and sometimes it looks very orangey. So it's about flying out and seeing it in person. And when I did saw it in person, it was just such a nice spec car, so in such good condition. I negotiated a little bit more with the guy, and 2 weeks later I flew out again and I picked it up, and then it was a 3-day drive to get here, basically, to get home.
Wow.
Yeah, great introduction to the car. By the time I had it here, it was my car already. So yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, what's the current mileage on the car, and do you know roughly what the mileage was when you purchased the car?
Yeah, I think it was just over 60,000 kilometers when I bought it, and now it's over 100. It's 105, I think. So I do about 10,000, maybe 12,000 a year, roughly. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That is really cool. And one thing I do like is that you've actually got the sport engine, because there's a number of people that will kind of say on the 987 Gen 1s that the base is kind of more reliable versus the kind of the engine that you've got. But I mean, you've had no issues. You've done what? You've done is it 100,000 kilometers so far?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've had no issues.
No, the car has done 100,000. Yeah. No, of course, when you start looking at these cars, you hear about the IMS failing and the bore scoring and all that stuff. And I was on every forum for like a month reading everything. And I actually got in touch with the guys from Auto House Hamilton in Australia, and they have a really long piece about the IMS on their website. And they basically said, with the Cayman S, they have hardly ever seen any problems with the engine. It's like less than 1%. Yeah. And the other advice you always get is, if you can buy a car that has done at least about 30,000 kilometers already in its lifetime, then that is most likely not a car that's going to have engine issues.
Really? I've never heard that before. Okay, so are they trying to indicate the failures come early in the life of the engine then? Exactly.
Yeah. If the problem is there, you'll notice it before you get there, basically. And percentage-wise, it's like, I think worldwide it's like 5% of all the Caymans. I think it's much more common on the 966, 911, and on the very early 986 Boxsters.
Okay.
But even for those cars, I mean, the ones that are still going now and they're going strong, just buy them.
That's great to hear. Yeah. I mean, I always learn something new in these kind of live streams, so that's really good. I didn't know that there was a kind of a time element to this, so thank you very much for sharing that. Let's kind of dip into the comments. I've kind of a lot have come through, but there was a number of guys saying that they liked your first car. That was was it the Camaro? That's the one. There you go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, so I think someone was just asking about the cops in New Zealand. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you do, but hypothetically speaking, if someone were to speed, how do the sort of the police kind of view speeding over there?
Well, the really nice thing about New Zealand is that you are allowed to have a radar detector in your car.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I was expecting that.
Wow, that's reaction. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, no, I mean, not that I condone, but
Well, it's to me, like everybody else, and having a motorbike as well. It's about safe driving. I think should be more important than whether you're slightly over the speed limit. Yeah. We do have quite a few road accidents in New Zealand. If you look at per capita, But that's also because, a lot of twisty roads and a lot of long drives. People drive for hours to get from A to B. So people get weary, a little bit tired, and also people start driving here at 16, I think, and 17, and there's not a lot of driver's education, as far as I know. So, crashes happen like everywhere else. And we've got quite a few trucks on the road as well, so you have to be careful with those. But having a radar detector, and it's right next to my rear view mirror, it's not hidden or anything, it's right there. And it does pay dividends to have one. Wow. And it was already in the car, so I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah. Actually, you just got me realising something. Because we're all generally sort of middle age, and that's a compliment to everybody on this channel. But when I first started driving, it was like about I'm trying to guess, maybe it was a 1 litre engine, maybe it was 70 brake horsepower. 0 to 60
Yep.
in maybe, I don't know, 15, 16 seconds. And, you know, the car would probably start shaking and falling to bits well before I hit the national speed limit. So I guess with youngsters now, a young person can start off in a much more powerful car than back in the days. And I know you had your Camaro, I mean, but then do you remember what the brake horsepower was on that? Because the engines weren't that efficient, were they?
No, they're not. And also, that was quite a tired car. So if that would have gotten up to 200 brake horsepower, that would have been about it, I think, realistically,
Okay,
Yeah.
There you go. So we've had someone asking about the engine issues, but I think we've covered that one. So that was from Roy V. So do you know roughly, I think you did touch upon this, how many Caymans and Boxsters are there in New Zealand? I mean, do you see many of those?
No, not a lot. I've been to a couple of Porsche meets, and then let's say if you get about 50 cars, I would say there's maybe 3 Caymans, out of the 50. So, but how many numbers-wise, I have no idea. But going back to my particular car and the specs, actually my car was a dealer spec car. Okay. So there's literally one Porsche dealer in Auckland, there is one in Wellington, and there's one in Christchurch. So there's one Porsche dealership on the South Island, and they decided to import one car in 2006 as a showroom, their showroom model.
Wow.
And that's my car.
Wow.
So that's why it has all those options. Yeah. So the only thing they couldn't get back then was the sport exhaust, because it wasn't available yet.
Okay.
I think they had to wait for another year on it, so it didn't have the sport exhaust. But everything else is in there, as you know. The seats are also heated, by the way, and it's got a lot of little extras. Stuff that I would have never paid money for myself,
yes,
but it's really nice to have. Yeah.
That's the good thing about buying used, because a lot of these options, it's the options that depreciate. And the car, I mean, I know you said you were comparing this with 2 other Caymans on the market at the similar time, but do you know spec wise, did this car stand out in terms of having more of the options?
More of the options, but also just a much more loved example. The other 2, they had multiple owners already, and it's just little details on a car. When you go and look at a second-hand car, scuffing on the wheels and stuff, little blemishes, imperfections on the interior, squeaks and rattles when you drive it, if you want a really nice car that you're going to have for a long time, you don't want to deal with any of those things. So when I went to see this car, the owner had it for 7 years, so I'm only the 3rd owner. So somebody bought it here on the South Island, and I've actually met that person as well, the very first owner, because once again, small country. And then he traded it in, I think, for a new 911. And when I met him, he was actually driving a 981 GTS. Okay. So he got back into a Cayman after that. And then what tends to happen is the second-hand, fairly young cars on the South Island, they tend to get sold back to Auckland because there's more of a market there. So then the second owner bought it there from the dealership, and he sold it back to the dealership. No, he didn't. No, sorry. He owned it, and then I bought it from him.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. And in terms of servicing, I mean, are they kind of like independent Porsche specialists there, or do you take it to any local garage, or do you actually get it serviced by Porsche?
Yeah, no, we're really lucky. Here in Christchurch, we have a great guy called Wayne, and he's got a place called Auto Authority, and he is like the Porsche guy on the South Island. And he does everything from like 356 restorations. He does a lot of prepping for race cars as well, special builds. But he's at Christchurch, and that's where I go for all my maintenance. And it's just a great place to be. It's just the cars in there, even though it's like a proper independent garage, it's not like a big, flashy showroom or something, but there's always some amazing cars in there. It's just a treat just to be there, really. Yeah.
Fantastic. I know there's actually a police officer on this channel from the USA. So if you know who you are, I'm talking. Can you tell me if the legality of having a radar detector in the USA, is it actually legal to have one, or is that frowned upon, and is that kind of against the law? So I think in the UK, it's not. I think they said something like, I think you can have a detector, but you can't have a jammer. I think that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you're allowed to have a jammer here either. You know?
Okay.
And it's a funny game here because, of course, the cops know that quite a few sports cars, they have a radar detector. So if they're not stationary, where they have their radar on all the time, if they're actually driving, they'll have their radar off until they get close to you, and then they flick it on at the last moment, trying to catch you. It's a bit of cat and mouse. Yeah. But so far so good. I've only had, I think I've only had about 2 speeding tickets and nothing serious. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So I think you've had your Cayman quite a few years now. So would you say that it ticks all your boxes? You're not thinking about another car after this, or a more modern Cayman. You're perfectly happy with this car, and any car with more power on the roads that you're driving, you probably wouldn't be able to use so much of that. Is that kind of a fair statement?
No, I think that's a fair statement. I do enjoy actually having the S version and having that little bit of extra horsepower over the base. And that's mainly just for overtaking trucks. Sometimes windy roads, you don't have a lot of opportunities, straight bits where you can actually see far enough ahead. Because these are all 2-lane roads, they're all, provincial roads. We don't have any, 4-lane roads hardly. Just around Christchurch, there might be about, 50 kilometers of 4-lane roads, and that's it, for the whole island.
Wow.
So you have to wait until you have a bit of a straight, and then if you have a double trailer, so a truck, a trailer, and another trailer, it's nice to be able to put your foot down and just pass it in a few seconds, Yeah.
I mean, is it quite easy to sort of see the road ahead and to make sure it's a safe manoeuvre, or, how sort of twisty are these roads?
Well, they are twisty, but then in that case, you just have to be patient,
Exactly.
Having said that, I see a lot of people that don't have the patience, and I always look at it and go well, there you go, you're taking your life in your own hands, but and that's not what I want to do,
I agree.
I'm just out there to have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But and then actually having a faster car, gives you a little bit of, I think it's actually a safer car, combined with the fantastic brakes and handling and everything. So if you do want to pass somebody, you don't need as much space as being in a normal car.
Yeah, you've just made me kind of think of a question, because I was in Charlie, he's on this channel, he had a 987 Gen 1 base car, and we were in the car, he was doing about 6,000 RPM at one point in time, but it did sound a bit different to my car, and it got me thinking that at kind of 6,000 RPM and above, does the base engine sound different to the sport engine? And I'd actually have to be there on the same day and have the 2 cars back to back. But that's one thing that you've just made me think about, because on that day itself, I thought, hang on, the engine does sound a bit different. But there was a big pause between us getting in between the different cars. But that's something that I think I'd like to sort of get put to the test back to back one day.
Yeah, well, I think there's an argument to say that maybe the base one is even more fun to drive because you actually get to rev it out more. I totally understand that. And it wasn't that I was looking specifically for an S. I was just looking for a first gen, a nice one, and a manual one. And it just happened to be an S, and now I'm happy that I have it, because I kind of like having that little bit of extra horsepower.
Yeah, and just to sort of say from Magic Ayrton, he was just saying he never struggles to overtake in his 987 Gen 2 base. We all love Caymans here. It doesn't matter which Cayman you have. So these are just personal preferences. I have a sport. That's just one of those things. But I think all Caymans are great. So never at any point in time on this channel do we try to sort of say, this car is better than that car. We've always say the best Cayman is the Cayman that you can afford and the Cayman that you can find, because you said you had to spend quite a long time to actually find a manual.
Yeah, because they're rare here, and then mine also has the short shifter, which I think is quite fun as well. That's just another box that the guy in the dealership thought, we'll have that too. Yeah. So I'm really happy with all his choices.
Yeah, good for you. I think we're still in lockdown, but this year I was planning to get a short shifter. And I think there's some kind of an ECU tune done on the car, but mainly for cracks and burbles, because I don't even have a sports exhaust either. So these were some things I was thinking about doing this year.
Yeah, well, the only mod that I really did on the car is I got the Carnival GT exhaust on it. So this is a guy in Belgium. His name is Gert Carnival, and he's got a shop. Basically, all he does is he takes in Porsches and other European cars, and he replaces the mufflers, and if you want also the headers, with original exhaust systems from that same car, but he just takes the cats out and he redoes something on the interior as well. He's got a patent on it, and he does have somebody in the U.S. that does the same thing for him, like as a franchise. Okay. And they're very cheap mods. They're much cheaper than actually getting like a Fab Speed or a Capistro or something like that, you know. And the nice thing also, it's still an original Porsche exhaust. So you can do two different things. You can either send or drive over, send your exhaust, take it off your car, send it over, and he'll do his magic, and he'll send it back and put it back on your car, and you'll have the same exhaust, but it will sound a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the exhaust. I mean, my barber's Italian, and the Capistro one, I think there's one for about 6,000 euros. It's a phenomenal price. But I guess because my barber's, he's Sicilian actually, and he said, if you want to get an exhaust, you got to get the Capistro one. But you know, that's just crazy money.
Well, and there's a line where it's fun. You know, I mean, I thought the car was a little bit too quiet, and I was missing a few, you know, pops and burbles and all that kind of stuff on the overrun with the standard exhaust. But I also don't want to have like a straight pipe Porsche, you know, or anything close to that, where if I started up, the whole neighborhood knows that I'm leaving, you know. So there is this fine line, and I think if you can get one with the Porsche Sport exhaust spec on it, you know, go for that one. And if not, then I think Carnival is the way to go, you know, because it saves you a lot of money and you get exactly what you want.
Yeah, I think we've just got a couple of guys agreeing with you that, you know, as the cars come, they're too quiet when they come stock. So, you know. Yeah, that's great. I mean, Carnival was one that I was looking into, but I just, it's one of these things that unless you can hear it in person, I mean, it sounds like your car came with that exhaust mod already, so you didn't have to worry about that. Oh, I did it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So okay. I actually had a Carnival system, so not the headers, but just the exhaust, sent from Belgium by freight to New Zealand, and I paid the import tax on it as well, and then I had them fitted here, and I still think I got a really good deal, you know, whereas for you could either, you know, drive through the tunnel and literally go to him and get it done while you wait, or have it swapped out by him on the spot if you don't mind picking up a different set of exhausts. You know, he can just do it. You drive in, he puts you on the hoist, you know, it just swaps them out and off you go again. And I think it's just great value for money. Yeah, so I still have the really original set. I still have them, you know, boxed up somewhere. So if I ever want to sell the car and somebody says, that exhaust is a bit too loud, they can just swap it out again.
There you go. Yeah, we've got a couple of guys all saying that, you know, that because I've mentioned I need a sports exhaust, and these guys are asking why I haven't done this before, and I think there's part of me that says that I think the 987 is going to be a classic Porsche, you know, whether it's like 4 years from now or 8 years from now, and I haven't quite made my mind up whether I go aftermarket, because I don't have a garage, my neighbours are quite kind of close by. If sometimes I leave the house at 6 a.m. in the morning, if it's not a valved exhaust system, I'm going to piss the neighbours off if I, you know, start the car. And I was just kind of thinking, I like the ability to kind of go between like standard. So basically having it switchable, having it valved, I think that's something that I'd like to do. And then I just need to decide, if you go valved, you either get the key fob, which is obviously not Porsche, or you get the PSE button and it's all proper Porsche. So that's the kind of thing I haven't quite decided yet. But at the end of the day, these mods can always be changed. You've kept the original parts, so you haven't done anything to your car that you can't undo.
No, but I can't see anybody buying my car and saying like, I don't like the sound, I'll go back to the original one. If it was, the only reason why I still have my original exhaust is actually that it would cost me more money to send it to Belgium.
Oh, wow.
And Carnival would pay me for it, you know, because he actually, what he does is one in, one out, you know.
Okay.
So, because he needs those exhausts again to modify for the next customer, you know. But me being on the other side of the planet, it economically didn't make any sense, so I just kept it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. In fact, there's a guy here that's basically said that he's got Carnival and he drove to Belgium last year, and I think I recognise his name. So he's based in the UK, so he kind of swears by that. And I think we've got Andy who's talking about he has a Magneti Marelli Elabros Il Lamborghini, it sounds Italian, it sounds expensive, and so this guy's got a 981 GT4 and an Abarth 59. I don't know if you know the Fiat Abarth, and he basically says that Italian exhaust on his Abarth is louder than his GT4. So I bet the neighbours love you, Andy, when you start that up. I think. I mean. No.
The neighbors here, they do notice, it's a bit different, but I work from home, so I don't have to start up at 6 a.m. or something like that and wake everybody up. So I mean, you can be a little bit more neighborly in that way. Yeah.
Actually, there's a few people just saying I don't track my car, but if you were to track your car, they're very strict on the kind of noise the regulations here. So actually, if you can have it valved or something, then obviously. But I mean, I don't plan on tracking my car. I'm not sure if you've ever thought of that, Arne.
I would love to do it. Yeah, we actually have a racetrack not too far from here, but it's a private racetrack. Somebody who's developing a new Formula One car. Wow. And then there's a racetrack close to Christchurch as well. But I think what I would be more interested in is doing a couple of driver safety days on the racetrack, basically. That would be really fun. Where you're just driving with an instructor and he just kind of fine-tunes your shifting and braking and that kind of stuff. Wow. Yeah. So,
we just had another guy say how much he speaks for carnivals. He's had 3 Boxsters and he's had carnivals on all of them. So he says the guy's got a good exhaust on. Yeah, it's not boy racer. I think that's the key thing, because anyone can have a loud exhaust, but I know it's quite hard for you to do, Arne, but is there any way that you can describe the whole exhaust carnival mods done to your car?
It's just a little bit more raw now. It's a bit more throaty. It has a little bit. It doesn't have a drone like a bassy drone. It's just more like metallic-y, kind of hollow sounding, And if it's just idling, especially on a cold start, it's very growly. And what I particularly like is on the overruns now, when you're really going for it, it just cracks and burbles, and it just has really nice noises, and especially in the.
I was looking to do some kind of an ECU tune to get the cracks and the burbles, but you're saying that can actually be done just with the Carnival mod.
Yeah.
Wow,
a big change from the stock exhaust to that. Yeah, and I would love to drive a Cayman once with the Porsche sport exhaust on it, just to hear the difference. But I'm very happy with my car, and that's another thing that I like about the Gen 1 cars. With the hydraulic steering and the way they kind of sound a little bit, they just sound a little bit more old school. I think, like every other car, like every other Porsche, they just got a little bit more refined with every generation. And I think the Gen 1s, they just have that little bit more of a raw feeling to it.
I completely get that. I mean, I had an email a couple of days ago from a guy who's got the money, so he can afford either a 987 Gen 2 Sport or a 981 Sport, and he was saying, which one would I choose and what should I think about if money's not the option? And I kind of echoed what you were saying, in the sense that, to me, like there's a vinyl LP. So we were all born when TVs were small. They maybe had a round dial to turn on them, and it's not all about the modern technology. There's a little bit of a classic thing to them as well. And sure, the 987 interiors look a little bit sort of dated compared to the 981, but it's whatever rocks your boat. And I think that's something that I'm torn between going modern, and that's going above a 987. But I think the older that I get, I quite like having a bit of nostalgia, and I almost like the older looking bits and pieces of the 987, which is odd, because I look at the 981 sometimes and go, that's a beautiful car, and then I actually get inside mine, and maybe I'm getting older or something, but I quite like the older touch to the car.
Yeah, and I think that definitely has to do with your age as well. I think you get a little bit more nostalgic, and but I think a good example, and somebody else on your channel said it as well. Like, my favorite Ferrari by far is the Dino. By far. I mean, there's other beautiful Ferraris out there, but the Dino for me is just it's so small, it's so beautiful. It's so simple and elegant, it doesn't have the big V12, it's a small engine. It's the poor man's Ferrari, Not anymore,
Exactly.
But when they came out, they were like frowned upon. They were like almost like the Caymans, like, oh, it's not a 911, it's not a proper Porsche or whatever. Now, if I had all the money in the world and I could buy one Ferrari, I would go for a Dino.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, I'm 6'3", and I don't think I'll be very happy in a Dino. But I love it. I think they're just spectacular cars, And for me, the Cayman is somewhere in that same, it's the smaller version, but it kind of makes it more fun,
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that quite a lot. There's a guy who's featured on this channel about over a year ago, and it's Eddie, and Eddie's got a 981 GT4. He's got the one in Carmine Red, and he was looking to basically sell that to get another GT4, but the Ferrari 308 GT4, I believe, or is a 308 GTO, there's a GT4, and it was almost at a similar price point. So I think maybe it's about £80,000, but he literally said, these cars, when they come onto the market, there's so many people that want them. They've somehow told these dealers, if you ever get a car, here's my holding deposit with you. They just leave it with the dealership. And they say, the car's mine. Don't even advertise it. Don't put it up, because the volumes we're talking about are so limited. But there's a lot of people out there that, they're buying into that history. And I think, as you're right, the older we get, I don't think they're 18, 21-year-olds buying these cars. They're the more mature people that maybe they were poster cars when these guys were kids, and now it's basically a possible reality.
Yeah. No, true. And like Nate was saying as well, bang for your buck. You get a mid-engine European high-end car for a very very doable amount of money.
Yeah, actually, you're saying that he's been commenting. I haven't even been seeing it, but Nate's just basically said, "I agree with Arne. It's the Ferrari I'd buy with my own money." So.
Yeah. Now, there's something about these small, kind of understated little cars that are just really pretty, and they're not flashy, but they do kind of. Somebody once, I read an article from a car journalist. And by the way, the Cayman, it won a lot of prizes in 2006. It just won just about every car journal prize that was out there. People really, really loved it when it came out, especially for the handling. But somebody called it the thinking man's 911, and I thought that was really cool.
I haven't heard that.
But of course, we're very biased here,
Agreed.
And the only other Porsche that really kind of gets me very interested would be a 993. I really, really like those. I mean, last of the air cooled. They're very, very pretty. But if I think about doing that, getting rid of my Cayman and getting into a 993, first there's the price jump. There's the jump in price to maintain it. You actually lose a little bit of power. You lose quite a bit of handling. And if you want to get a 993 handling well to what we're used to now, you're looking at suspension upgrades. You're looking at, probably getting new wheels and really high-grade tires for it, doing some engine management work on it. It's just a lot of money, to get that kind of handling from an older car. So, no, I'm absolutely happy with my car.
Well, sorry, go on.
No, and I like to keep stuff. I think also if you have stuff for a longer time, it kind of, grows on you and it really becomes yours. Like, for an example, and I think it's quite extreme, but I bought a motorbike when I was, I think I was 20 or 19, and I still have it. Wow. So I've had one motorbike in my life, and I've had it for over 20 years now. Yeah, and I've done a lot of modifications to it. I've rebuilt it myself, and that's just, that's part of the fun. If I would upgrade every couple of years, I wouldn't have the same feeling I have with it that I have now. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably something that's echoed based on. I mean, I get to see the demographics of the people on this channel. It's generally 35 to like 65 with a big kind of bulk in the middle. So it's kind of like 40 to 60s, the big bulk in the middle. And I guess there's something around. Maybe in life we could afford something else, but why? Because we're not trying to prove anything to anybody. This is our life. We get one shot at it, and who gives a damn whether you've got a base sport, this flashy 911 turbo. It's just about enjoying life and getting the most out of the car and not worrying about the financial pressures that you put yourself under. So, I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of other stuff in life that also you can spend your money on,
That is true.
Yeah, so I mean, if you can have a nice Cayman and actually have the money to take it on trips and stay in hotels and have nice dinners and visit museums and go to galleries or whatever you're into, because you have a little bit of money left, I would far rather do that than have a very flashy brand new 911 with payments on it and kind of cringing at the thought of the next service coming up. It's praying. Yeah, no, I'd rather have a little bit less expensive car and actually get have the freedom to enjoy it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people agreeing with you, kind of chatting in at the moment, going, and they do like your pick on the 993 as well. I mean, Clive's just said if he ever had a 911, it would be the 993. So I think you're amongst friends there. You sent me one picture, by the way. I'm going to pull up on screen right now, and this was the one that you scanned out of this book or something. So I'm not too familiar with this. This is the is it the 904?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even familiar with this. It's a beautiful looking car.
Oh, it's stunning, and that really it's also the only car that makes the Cayman look big. And that's a real race car, from the 60s and 70s. But that to me is also what I really like in a car. It's just such a beautiful piece of kit, It's just stunning.
It looks. Do you know if that car was road legal at all?
I've only seen videos of it actually on tracks, but so I don't know. But hey, man, you've got Pinky Lay coming up.
Yeah.
And I can. I'm really curious to hear what he has to say. And I do know this car, so the 904, was a big inspiration for the Cayman. And then what a lot of people don't know is that the 550, so the little James Dean Spider, there was actually a coupe variety of that car as well. And I think they only made about 10 examples of it, a very, very low number. But those two cars, so the 550 coupe and the 904, which is in the picture, that's definitely a big part of Pinky's inspiration.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, we'll ask him himself. I mean, Nate's just sort of said he can see loads of design cues in the 904 into the Caymans. And I'd probably say more in the 987s because they're very bulbous kind of curves there. And, I was just looking at the 981 today, and I can see that they've kind of flattened out some of the curves. And from some angles, I prefer the 981, but I guess the 987 is the more curvy car, if that's your thing.
Well, I think your video that you have on your channel, with the two blue ones side by side, that's a perfect way to see the differences. And the 987 is the curvy one. And I actually think if I could talk to Pinky myself, I said I could be even more curvy. I think the fender go even higher. Yeah.
Well, listen, I think it's 2 weeks time, so I think if you just wake up a similar time, like 7 a.m. your time, he should be on in 2 weeks time. I think that's
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be great. And I talked about it. So that photo is actually from a book. It's called Cayman, Thrill of the Chase.
Okay.
And I'll just hold it up for a little bit so people can see it.
Let me just put you on full screen. There we go.
Yeah. So, like every car nut, you go look for a book that is actually about your car, and go get one. I think they're pretty cool. It has the original designs pictures in there as well, and the text in the book isn't that great. It's all about how the Cayman is the next, kind of predator on the market. They really went with that whole animal analogy, But the photos in there are really cool.
Wow. Okay.
So it's worth getting one, and I think they're about US dollars. I paid about $70 US for this one on eBay. So they're out of print, but if you have a Cayman, get yourself that book. It's just fun to have. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for being on this show. We've had a number of people commenting that they've really enjoyed this live stream, and I've got to say that the reason that people enjoy these live streams is not because of me, it's because of guests like you that come onto this channel and do all the kind of like talking and sharing their backstories. So, without you guys, these live streams are nothing. So thank you very much, Arne.
Hey, I'm very happy to do it, and I've enjoyed the other live streams as well, and I really enjoy your channel. And yeah, no, it's just fun to talk about these cars, and I think also your channel is, it's small enough to be very kind of low key and fun, and you've obviously put a lot of effort into all the videos when you actually go out, and film those, and I think it's also cool for you to know that there's people on the other side of the world watching those videos,
Oh, yeah,
and getting a lot.
yeah.
Yeah,
I would have
yeah.
never thought the reach goes that far, to be honest. I mean, this has always been a hobby for me, and I guess it kind of lets me get out my creative passions. But I'd probably say it's only the last maybe 1 year that the interactivity is really sort of engaged, and I think that's great because I've probably been doing this thing for about 3 years, and there's only so much one person can put content out there. And I think I had an email from a guy a couple of days ago going, "I really wish that you had 10,000 subscribers or 50,000," and I kind of replied back to him and I said, "You know what? This is a hobby channel, okay? This is not a revenue generating channel, so I never advertise products, and I never say, I generally don't go click, like and subscribe, because we're just a bunch of guys having a laugh, sharing a common sort of theme here, and trust me, this thing costs me way more to put together than anything that I get. So this is just about bringing us together, a bunch of normal guys is what I call it, because I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you're not looking to change your car. You've got everything you need. And a lot of these guys, and I'm not knocking them, it's just what they do. A lot of the YouTube stuff is change the car every 6 months, every 3 months, 12 months, and you're always featuring a different channel. And for me, when a guy says, this is the best car in the world, and then 3 months later they go, no, this is the best car, and 3 months later, no, this is the best car, you kind of go, well, are you just advertising different cars every 3 months,
Well, that's to get the hits, the clicks, I mean, your channel is small because you're focused on the Cayman, If you would have a different car every 2 weeks, more people would watch it too. But just like everybody else here, I've watched just about every video on the Cayman on YouTube, both before I got the car and afterwards. And then you also find your videos, and then you're like, oh wow, this is Cayman orientated, and look at all these videos, and I've watched them all and I've enjoyed them all. Thanks a lot for doing that.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, let's just I'll have a quick check to see what's happened on the comments thread. So something about the steering. So you actually mentioned that Roy V's kind of commented about the you like the hydraulic steering. Just out of interest, have you driven a 981, or is it just you like the hydraulic thing more because it's mentally it's old school?
Yeah. I haven't driven a 981. No, I've seen a lot of car journalists actually comment on it, that the only thing they didn't like with the 981, the upgrades basically, was the move to electronic steering. But I mean, these are all really finicky kind of things. It's like finding something to talk about on a near perfect car like the Cayman. It's like, if you don't like the headlights of the first generation, you like the second generation better. Well, of course, there's always something which you might like. And I think it's also fun about these Porsches because they're so different. Each individual car is different. They're all spec'd differently. And watching the guy in Norway with his Cayman R, completely different again, and just fantastic. What a great car. Or the other guy, I think from the UK or maybe the States, who was kind of recreating a GTS.
Yes, yeah.
Who bought the carbon seats, amazing, and he's done everything right as well. I mean, that's for that type car, he's built the perfect car, and it's funny because if you look at those cars and you look at my car, they're almost like a world apart. They're completely different. Those are hyper sports cars. And everything is about performance, and you've got the 4-point harness and everything else, whereas mine is quite luxury spec'd, which I think for normal driving, especially longer drives, is just ideal. But that's the fun about these things; they're not all the same.
Yeah. And, just one other thing I was just thinking about. All these kind of twisty roads that you have. Do you kind of get like rockfall, or do you actually get stones on the roads, or would you say that most of the cars over there, because the Cayman must be quite a low car compared to your 4x4. So are you prone to get like stone chips or things falling into the road?
Yeah, stone chips, we do get those here on the South Island quite a bit, because when they do road works, they basically leave quite a bit of gravel on it, and it just needs to get driven in basically by the traffic. So if you're unlucky, there's a truck coming from the other side, you do get stones flying sometimes, and that can be quite annoying. So my car definitely has a few chips. One day I'll I'll probably get them touched up, and I'll also put a clear coat, like a clear bra on the front at least. But it's not noticeable, it's only if you really, kneel down and look at, slight imperfections. The other thing we have here is New Zealand has possums. They're imported from Australia.
Okay.
So they have no natural predators here in New Zealand, so there's quite a few of them actually, and they're about the size of a really big cat, and they do get run over at night. Mm-hmm. So quite often when I'm driving on the road and there's a dead possum in the middle of the road, I'm always very happy that I have enough clearance to actually go on both sides of the animal. I always think if I would be driving a GT4 right now, I would be scooping. I would be taking that, possum to wherever I'm going today,
That doesn't sound good. There you go.
No, it doesn't. No.
We have some comments just to end with. So Andy said it's been great to see the sunrise over Arne. So that's great.
Hey,
Yeah, it's a lot lighter now than the start. There we go. Just a couple of guys sort of saying, thanks for everything. So these are all thanks to you, Arne. And oh, good. I like this one. Someone's just said, "Thank God that I'm not Shmee." So there you go. Okay. No, I'm not Shmee. He's probably one of the world's most successful YouTubers. But hey,
that's one guy I can't watch. That's just it's not my cup of tea. I like a lot of YouTubers. I watch Harry Metcalf as well. Harry's Garage. I think he's great, and it's fun to see all these very exotic cars and stuff. But I always feel a little bit weird when I watch somebody who has like a giant collection of cars. Jay Leno is one of them, obviously. But even like Harry's Garage, you look at this vast garage with like 20 beautiful cars and another 50 motorbikes and whatever. I'm always a little bit like, come on, man. Who needs this? Just get a really nice car that you really love, and then maybe, yes, if you have a lot of money, get another car that you might never drive, but you just love to have, which for me, it would probably be like a original GT40, Ford GT40. I think they're fantastic.
Well, I've got to say, I mean, the last thing I want to say for myself, yesterday I watched Ford versus Ferrari, okay? And I tell you, amazing film. If you haven't seen the film, watch the film, okay? Great acting by Christian Bale and Matt Damon. And I was like, wow, I'd like a Ford GT40, the old one, but I've heard they were pigs to drive though. Yeah,
there's a guy in South Africa actually that still makes them. So he basically bought all the molds and all the tooling from Ford, and he's still making those original GT40s, but of course with modern suspension and a modern engine and all that stuff. And I mean, that for me would be like sky's the limit. Money's no issue. I'd probably have one of those. But would I enjoy it as much as my Cayman? Would I drive it as much? Probably not. It would be a garage queen kind of thing. And also talking about being noisy. Starting that thing up. It's like Whereas at least I think with the Cayman you get everything you want from a sports car without all that theater or all that drama, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, Arne, and thank you all for your comments. I know there was a whole bunch scrolling through towards the end. Quite a few of them making me laugh because I don't know if you've seen this video with Andy in his red 981 GT4 with the ladies' lingerie in his glove box. I don't know if you've seen that one. No. But I think that kind of made a few sort of people laugh. But it's a great place, and I think Nate kind of summed up this channel as like it's a nice worn shoe, which I think is like we're more of a family here. It's not kind of like I don't know, pretentious or anything. It's just a bunch of guys talking about cars. Arne, thank you very much for joining me here today. Thank you all for your comments. And next week we've got Dan from Numeric Racing. He's kind of like got a Porsche tuning company. So I know on my car the shifter cables failed. So Dan kind of makes performance aftermarket products for the Porsche. So we'll kind of talk through some of the stuff with him and kind of his background. But anyway, today has been about all your time, Arne. Thank you very much for your story. Thanks very much for sharing your car. And I'll let you get on with your morning. Thanks for waking up early for us and enjoying life and cars to the max. Anything else? Anything else you'd like to say, Arne?
No, thanks a lot, Max. And if you ever make it out here, I'll take you for a drive.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Arne. See you later. Bye.
Cool.